Hello, and welcome to the post-production sessions. This particular masterclass will be covering post-production audio. I'm your host, Devon George, and for the next hour, I'll be going through everything to do with post-production sound, what it entails, how I started my process, and how you can achieve great professional audio on low-budget productions. This masterclass is for all levels of filmmakers, whether you want to improve your skills within post-production audio, or you're just interested to see how it works in the behind the scenes. There's something for everyone within these sessions, and I hope everyone can learn something new by the end of this. So let's get started, shall we? Make sure you're following the rest of the Leeds Film Festival on their socials and leedsfilm.com, following any events, interviews, streams, and other post-production sessions that may follow. So let's get started with the introductions. Like I said, I'm your host Devon George, and I've been working within film for the past 3 years. I am based in West Yorkshire, and I work a variety of different roles within film and film audio, whether that's being on set as a sound recordist, mixer, a boom operator, or just a sound assistant. And then within post-production, I've worked as either the main post-production sound editor, or working on like little things, or sound design. So a good first question is, how did I get here? A good first question is, how did I get here? I started at Leeds Beckett University studying music production, and there was an optional module in my second year for post-production sound which I took, and I just kind of fell in love with it from there. Worked on that and met some amazing people within the local scene in Leeds, and then one thing led to another, and I got my opportunity working on a film set with Oxygen Films, and then from there I've been given more roles within their production company, and now I kind of oversee all of the sound stuff both on set and in post. So let's kick things off with, what is post-production sound? Well, post-production sound or post-production audio is basically anything to do with sound or audio after filming or the production has been filmed. So this can range from different things as sound effects, Foley, ADR, which is when dialogue needs to be re-recorded, any re-recordings and stuff. So once the editor has edited and clipped all of the video and audio files, so then it's all so then the film is essentially kind of structured, or once the film has essentially been structured, then that gets sent off to different teams, and the audio team or the supervising sound editor gets that footage and then can either handle it from there and delegate different roles and tasks. For lower budget productions and post-production teams, usually you might be doing everything yourself, or you might have like one or two people doing certain tasks. So the main role is the supervising sound editor, and then under that you have the re-recording or the dubbing mixer, sound designer, the special effects editor, the dialogue editor, the Foley artist or mixer, and also the ADR recorder / mixer. And each of those have like an important role into adding certain things. So let's look at the 3 fundamentals of post-production audio, where you got ADR, which is audio dialogue replacement. It's got some other names as well, but that's like the main sort of, ADR is the main name for that. Got Foley, and then you have sound design. So ADR, audio dialogue replacement, basically means any dialogue or any scenes where there's any talking involved, if any voiceovers as well, if any of that needs to be re-recorded, then they might need to bring in the talent or the actor in question and re-record those lines. They can be kind of filmed at their own place and then sent to you, or if you have a studio environment where you can get a clear take, then that's probably the best option. You then have Foley artists. The Foley is used to record any interactions with objects. It can be a human or animal. It could be from me grabbing a cup and like the movement and like the sound that goes into it, taking it off the table, putting it back down, rustling of clothes, anything like that. Me clicking on a mouse could count as Foley footsteps. And yeah, and that kind of covers that sort of area. And then you have sound design. Sound design can involve a huge variety of different things, whether it's background noise, atmosphere, sound effects, things that couldn't be recorded during the time. So whether that's like, say, if you have a fight scene, for example, and you need like a punch or kick, things like that. In films that might involve like weapons or guns, you might need to record it. You might record it on its own and then implement it into the mix, and then also the whole syncing and sort of framing into the project. And then, like I said, then above that, then once everything kind of comes together, you have the supervising sound editor, which then kind of combines all the elements together and produces the mix. I've not covered music for post-production audio just because usually, unless you've been hired to be the composer as well, usually someone else might do that role and then send you the music to then implement in, or the director or editor might have suggestions or have their own licensed music in order to kind of put in certain bits if your project requires that. So now that I've gone through the basics of post-production audio, we're going to start getting into the prep work, or the pre-production of the post-production, let's just say. And that starts off with just communicating with the editor and the director and any people that you have in your sound team for the post-production audio. Specifically the editor, because once they edit and send you all of the project files, the audio and the video file, you'll be talking with them in regards to how you want it to be exported, in what formats, any notes that were made during the edit, or things that we may need to consider for when we open up the mix and start working on it. There's a lot of different variables and things, so it's good to have an open communication with the editor and the director as well, in order to send revisions or any notes or just feedback and advice with that. So touching on the point about the format and the exporting of the files once it's completed, it's important to know what platform this project is going to be on. Whether it's just going to be YouTube, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and that. And it's the same with music as well, like whether it's Apple Music or Spotify or Tidal, because each platform has their own recommendations and guidelines in terms of like how loud things can be and like formats and stuff. So it's always good to know what you're getting yourself into. I'm not sponsored by this company, but a company called Ulean make a really good free loudness plugin for any digital audio workstation of your choice. And if you go onto their website, they will go through different loudness standards, and they'll have a table of what different countries and different platforms require you to have a perceived loudness, or LUFS, or LKFS or LUFS, depending on what country you're in or doing the edits in. So every country has their own sort of set standard for loudness, including, like I said, platforms, so Spotify, in terms of post-production as well, Netflix, Amazon Prime, any streaming websites YouTube will have their own sort of like set standard for how loud things can be without, you know, before it's either deemed too much or they might implement like an automatic limit. So say if the editor said that this is intended for Amazon Prime or Netflix, or it just needs to be the UK standard for loudness, then it will show you what the limits are and the thresholds and things that you need to consider for that. So once you get the files from the editor, it'll either be in a AAF format, which is the more commonly used one nowadays, or the slightly outdated but still usable OMF file format. Once you get that, you can finally implement it into your digital audio workstation of choice. Mine in particular is Pro Tools, it's because I've always used it and it's like one that I know, and it's really good for video and post editing. However, if you don't need Pro Tools, any digital audio workstation or software that supports a video engine or can support AAF or OMF file formats can still be used for it. So Logic is a good example, because you can have a video file within your sound project and still edit everything. So yeah, so once you decide which DAW you're going to use, you can now, like I said, implement it into your session, and I'm going to show you how I do it through Pro Tools, and that's going into Start, Import, and then importing the file session, and I'm just going to show you that now. So now that we've opened up Pro Tools, I'm going to show you how I create a session and then import all of the data that the editor has sent to us, so then we can get started and get working. So I'm going to go to File, Create New, and then here you have the dashboard where you can create a new session. So here I choose the file type, which is WAV, and then usually for film and video production or video sound editing, I usually go with 24-bit and 48 kilohertz. And then with that we can name it. Usually I will have the name as what the production is called and then sound edit, just so then when I send the bounced or the completed files over to someone, then they know what it is. If I was doing ADR or sound design, then I'd have sound design or ADR at the end of it instead. But for this purpose, we're just going to be the sound edit, because usually on a low budget, you're kind of doing most of the things yourself, so we're doing it that way. So for the indies, we're going to go with indies sound edit. And from there, you go and create. So when you click create, it will take you to the file explorer, which will then allow you to choose where you want to save your project and your session. I highly recommend that within that you should have like a main folder, and then within that have the subfolders. So one of the subfolders should be all of the footage and all of the data that your editor has sent to you, or anyone else has sent to you, and then the other one can be your sound edit. So now that we've created the session and chosen the location to save it, we're going to import the session data now. So we go back to File, Import, and Import Session Data. From there, I'm just going to blur this window for now, just whilst I get to the correct folder, because I don't want to show any ongoing projects at the moment. But what I will show is from a series of light, which is a series from Oxygen Films that I helped to work on for both the sound and post-production sound. And we're going to go into Limelight, which was their final episode for that season. So now that we're in the Limelight folder, you can see that I've got the Indies sound edit, which is going to be the main one, and the Limelight files, which, you know, the subfolders that I previously mentioned. I do have this, which is what I worked on, but we're just gonna leave that for now. So we're gonna go into Limelight files, AAF file folders. So then we're gonna find the AAF file, which is here. It's called Limelight Assembly. So we're gonna double click on this, and it's gonna import it now. So now once we get into this screen, it's going to show you all of the all of the tracks or the sources that's going to get added onto this part. I'm going to show you all the information about it, what you want to do in terms of the timecode mapping, whether you want to start it from 0 or you want to map it to get to a certain point, if you need to offset it, if you want to link the media or you want to just copy it and you want to link any things like that. What if we're going to apply any sample rate conversions or like that. And then also what you can do is that because the AAF also stores certain data, so like any edits that the editor has done, so any clips, any clip gain, volume adjustments, automation gets transferred over. I like implementing it just so I can kind of see what the editor has done, and then I'll kind of then see if it works for me or if I'll do my own. But it's always nice. It's always nice to see what it is, because you can easily then just then take it out. So then we're going to go to OK. Let's change the session's frame rate to yep, that's fine. Session contains. And then sometimes, depending on how the session was created and formatted, then it might ask you so just say yes. Now sometimes once you import the session data, sometimes the audio files or certain files might not link properly. So from there, all we got to do is automatically find and relink, or you might just need to manually do it yourself. So we're just going to go to click OK, see if that does it, and we're just going to wait for it to pop up. Sometimes when importing the session data into Pro Tools or a digital audio workstation of your choice, sometimes the files might not link up, or depending on how it was saved or exported, some files might be, or some links might be broken, so you just need to relink that. If you are having any issues, then there are plenty of guides online that can help you towards that. What I do personally is that I'm just going to show you the main part of it. So we're doing Limelight. I'll get to the Limelight files, and these are the files in questions that aren't linked. From there, you've got different options, and then usually I just do it by name, and I don't match any of the things because usually the name is enough. But if you want it to be like concrete and make sure, then you can do like the format or the ID for each file. But we're there, and then we can commit the links. So now everything you can see here behind is that everything's been implemented. So I'm just going to quit out of that. And now you can see that all of the audio files are here, including the music as well. That's been implemented as well. And finally, sometimes if you are having an issue with a video file not relinking or not being present when you import the session data, you can simply just import file, import the video, which will then allow you to sync it up with everything, as long as you keep the same time code as you did when you import the session data. So now that we've got all the files here, usually what I'll do is that I'll give it a listen. I'll bring out like a notepad, or I'll bring up Microsoft Word, and I'll start like listening through the whole piece, what I think of it. The way how I got Pro Tools set up is that I have my comment section here. So as soon as I know what this is, or what a certain track or channel involves, then I can comment what it actually is, and then I know then what to do in order to structure my session. So once you've given it a listen and you know what each channel and track contains and what audio is present, then you can use those notes to assess what you need to do next. Usually in my process, what I'll do is I will then structure everything into different groups, And what these groups do is they help you kind of define what is, like, say, what is dialogue, what is FX, what is Foley. And then from there, it helps you get a clearer mind of how things are structured. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch from this Indies sound edit into the actual Limelight sound edit and show you how I've structured my session. So now that we're back with the actual project for Limelight, this is what the final product looked like. How I sectioned it, how I grouped everything together. So usually what you'll see is how I was taught is that it's like set into different stages. So what you would have for dialogue would be, or world would be like DX.01, and then you kind of go from there. Depending on, and then then you have Foley, FX, sound design, voiceover might fall into the DX or dialogue thing, but I did it as my own thing. You got atmosphere, which can fall into sound design, but I like separating everything. And then from here, I'm just going to go through what each sort of thing entails. So how I kind of differ mine to others is that sometimes I'll either do it as a DX if it is just a raw dialogue, or if there's other things kind of implemented in with it, then I'll just kind of call it world. But for all intents and purposes, it is DX or dialogue. But you can structure it however you want, as long as if you are working with other people, and that in your sound crew, then as long as you all have a unified knowledge or of what's going on, and just so then there's no confusion when passing work on to each other. This is just to show the other things. So if you've got the sound design here, voiceover, the Atmos or the room tone, and then also the music files. So after I've done the notes, or I've made a plan of what needs to be recorded, what needs to be re-recorded, if there's any effects, Foley, sound design that may need to be implemented, then I'll have like a plan and like a sort of like a then I'll have a plan as to what kind of needs doing in a checklist. If you had other people that you were working with, then you could delegate certain tasks to people that were specializing in Foley or sound design. But we're doing it all as like a one-man band at the moment, so we're just kind of focusing on getting it all nice and done. So the first thing that I like to do personally, once you get everything kind of structured and set and planned, is that I like to just clean up the audio. So usually that's like creating a fade in and a fade out, so clips clips kind of fade in nicely with each other, so it's not such a drastic change from one shot to another. It's fine when you like visually, but in terms of audio, depending on the position of the boom microphone or the position of the microphones at that time, if it was facing a certain way, facing a window, if there's traffic outside, the transition from one cut to another might be a bit jarring, or you might be able to might be audible. So from here, what we are going to do, which I have already done in this, but we are going to, if I expand this world a bit more, and I'm just going to hide this just to, because we're going to get onto this in the next part. But from here, so right now we've gotten quite up close with a clip that I'm going to showcase, and from here you can see that the start and end of it has a fade in. So you can do that by holding on a clip and pressing Control F, which is there where you can actually then fine tune certain things or have it in a certain way, if it's a crossfade, a fade in or fade out. What I like to do is that with clips, if you say, I'm going to show you this way, if on Pro Tools, if you have the Smart tool selected, you can hold the top corner and then just start a fade like that, and that's That's as easy as that with fade ins and fade outs. But I'll do that with everything. And like I said, how certain scenes might be a bit jarring if you were to just kind of like not fade the audio in with each other, or not fade the audio together, depending on the angle and the positioning of microphones and stuff. So what you can do here is called a crossfade. So if I take this off, you can see that there's a distinct switch between different takes, whether that was a camera angle, camera shot changing, or you wanted to sync two different audio clips together. From there you can hold on to the bottom and then drag that out, so then that creates something called an X fade, which basically then fades both clips into each other, and then that's how you get that. Just gonna that, and I'll do that throughout the whole thing for every single track, just so then I know that the audio itself is clean. I make sure that there's no outside noise that shouldn't be there and all that. So then from there, we're going to get into levels. So now we're going to get onto the subject of levels, or volume in particular, as I like to not use automation in the traditional sense. If you just bear with me for a second. I don't particularly like using automation like this throughout, because when you commit to having something like, this is a very drastic example I'm just going to show you. You can see in the on the fader, or the main fader, that you've kind of committed. So then if you wanted to edit a certain bit, or be like, oh, at this point I want it to go back up, and you start playing again, it's just gonna jolt back. So I don't really like using that. I'll use it for certain things, so like pans, which I know are going to be definitely, either centered or left or right. So what I like to do, and another reason why I like to use Pro Tools, is that there's something called clip gain, which you can edit and adjust each individual clip, so like the volumes for each, and how they transition or move. So in order to show it on Pro Tools, you right click on a clip gain, and then you can show line. And from here, you can see that I've already kind of worked on it. You can see that I have basically adjusted the automation in this way. So then I know everything here is all together, or is around the same volume, or the dynamic range works well. And I'll do this for everything in one scene, and then once that's done, that's that scene complete. And then I'll work on scene 2 as its own separate thing. So then I'll do it separately. So then if I feel like, oh, scene 1 is a little bit too quiet compared to scene 2, or vice versa, I can then automate the full clip. I can automate the full scene, sorry. I can automate the full scene in order to then make it flow, or, have a similar dynamic range, or, make it fit together. Following levels, like I said with the automation, I will then go with pans. I will then pan everything accordingly to where the camera's positioned, where the sound should be placed, or where the sound would be placed in compared to the camera, and just kind of make sure that it all flows together, that it's all synced up, that it all just makes sense. So then once all of that is done, I then like to implement effects and plugins into my mix. Coming from a music background, kind of learning how to clean up vocals, I like to keep quite a. Of course, I'm not going to auto-tune dialogue, but I want to keep it very, very neat but very clean, so it doesn't affect the the world around the world and the room tone. So particularly for dialogue, I'll have usually like a low pass filter to remove a lot of the rumble. I'll have some sibilance so there's not a lot of plosives and it's not too harsh to the ear compared to that. And then usually I'll have myself a compressor and a de-esser. And then also, depending on if I am able to have a good room tone or good atmosphere, like I do, I'm just going to try and bring this up a bit more. So I've got different room tone examples. And here, because I've got a lot that I can use, I can then implement something called Isotope RX, which is very similar to the Adobe Audition in terms of like its audio manipulation and that where you can actually go into the waveform and the spectrum and the frequency spectrums and edit things in and out, or or clean up a lot of audio. So that's really good for post-production, which I will show very soon. And that's usually my basic kind of setup chain for dialogue. Cause I don't want it to be like, say, like I said. So going into the mixer, this is usually kind of like my plugin chain for dialogue. It's not, like I said, it's not vocals on a song where you want it to be very, tailored and fine-tuned. This is, it's just people talking and you want it to be realistic, so you just basically want to just clean up and remove any harshness or anything that might be like polarizing to the viewer when you do. Going back to Ulene, as I did mention earlier, I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. So this is Ulene Loudness Meter 2. I've bought the pro version. There is a free version that is amazing but I bought the pro version just to support the developer behind it. Isotope and Waves has their own version of this, which are really good as well, and I recommend us having any version of this. What Loudness Meter does is basically show you a more detailed and more accurate version of what the perceived loudness is, which is LUFS or LUFS. And like I said, on the website for Ulene, it will show you a loudness standards and a chart for each country and also each streaming platform, and that's so you know exactly what you need. For the free version, it will show you the UK standard, which is EBU R128, and that will be the kind of default once you pay for the pro version, and also for some other ones it will give you more access. It'll give you access to more presets. So usually I just stick to the default because that's -24, and that's what I usually go towards when I'm working with oxygen films, just because then it's universal. So with the default, it will, well, actually -23, apologies, it will stick with that. So if I start playing the audio in question, you can see that it's now analyzing. You see that it's now analyzing everything to do with it, and it gives you an accurate reading of the integrated, which is basically like the averaged out, what the max is, what the short-term max, the true peak. So the true peak is what it's actually, so like ideally you don't want it to go past -12, because that's usually when you go past -24 LUFS. So one more plugin or piece of software that I would like to talk about or recommend is Isotope RX8. The equivalent to this is, if you do have the Adobe Creative Cloud, Adobe Audition is very similar to this, where it's like an audio manipulation and like fine-tuning tool, where it's like you can go into the actual frequencies and the waveforms and like edit and control certain parameters that you might not on other pieces of software. So I'm just going to show you the options and like kind of like the layout of how this works. So here you can see in RX, once I have a audio file opened up, it shows you both the waveform and also the frequency spectrum that the sound incorporates. And if you go down here, if you go all the way to the left, you can just see the raw audio. And if you go all the way to the right, you can see the frequency and like how the higher it is, basically the higher the frequency or the higher the pitch, and how that basically correlates. So with that, especially, it's really good for cleaning up dialogue in case there's a bunch of different tools and utility items that you can use at your disposal in order to restore or fix audio that might have had some complications whilst recording on set and you didn't realize till afterwards. So there might have been like a loud pop or click, or maybe the cable had some crackle, or there might have just been anything. What this can do is that it can it's got a very smart AI that can listen to the whole piece and like edit certain things out. So you can basically save a recording in case just in case anything kind of goes haywire during the production. So just one final note about iZotope RX and like things like Adobe Creative Cloud is that even though they are a godsend, they are very helpful. If you don't have the budget for it, it's not necessary. I think it's one of those things that once you start getting more jobs under your belt, or you start getting more of a passion for it, then I'd recommend trying to get something like RX or Audition or like an equivalent to that, where you can like go into the audio file itself and clean up any bits or things that, like, say your DAW like Pro Tools might not be able to fix or access, sort of thing. So that's just something to keep in mind for like future plans or future where to put your money when you're building your studio or building your workstation up. And finally, before I go off the plugins, other than that Ulean loudness meter, all the plugins I use essentially came with finally, just to add a note, other than that Ulean, which I chose to pay extra for the pro version, and some things from iZotope, everything I use and every plugin or extra stuff I use on my projects. So other than Ulean, which I paid extra for just to support the developers, and certain products from iZotope like RX, everything I use is stock or or free to use. So whether that's the EQ, the compressor, the sibilance I use is one from Waves which I picked up for free, but you can use the de-esser and other like free ones that are stock or that you can find online or that works with your digital audio workstation. So like, don't feel like you need to spend a lot of money on fancy plugins or anything like that, because you can make great products for for little to no budget. The main thing, if you are going to go down the Pro Tools road, is just the actual software for Pro Tools itself. But there's different models and things you can do in order to have Pro Tools, and whether it's just a rental subscription or you own it or anything like that. But once you have it and it's all set up and you're in there, you don't really need anything else other than just the stock stuff, and then a loudness meter plugin like Ulean, like the free version, so you can actually see what the actual loudness is, so you can better fine tune how loud and the levels and everything's going to be. So that's essentially a crash course as to how like I do my process, how I edit things, how I, you know, kind of condense it. I follow, to be honest, a pretty similar pattern for all of my projects just because it's simple and effective. If anything needs to be added, what I can do then is that, so as you can see behind me, I don't exactly really have a studio setup, but because I mainly mix on headphones and I can essentially get my room to a quiet enough stage as possible where I can actually record things at a decent quality and then implement it and fine tune it within Pro Tools and blend it in order for it to sound as part of the environment. So a lot of that could be Foley, sound design. I have a portable recorder with me, so if I do need to do any field design, I can go out and about, record things that happen, you know, record things out in the wilderness, or, you know, just everyday going-ons, and, you know, implement to that. So as I said, whether you need to re-record something, edit something, so as I said, whether you need to re-record something, go out and about and record yourself doing something at home. No. So whether you need to re-record or record something to add into your scenes, which is usually like Foley or FX or sound design, it's best to get, you know, a bit of research in and stuff. A book that I really enjoy and really like is called the Sound Effects Bible. It's been out for a while, and if you're able to find a source of it, either whether online or a physical copy, it is basically everything like an A to Z of sound effects, or how to recreate certain sounds in order for the listener to think it is that. Because a lot of Foley and the magic behind recording for post is that, like, you could, as long as things are synchronized or synchronization, you can essentially make anything believable enough. So a good example that I've seen when I did a bit of research, in order to get dog paws like on the floor, usually it's just a glove with paper clips attached to it, and that's how you can recreate like a dog walking, and just fun little things like that. In this scene in particular, which I'm going to show an example of, I had to basically recreate a head being smashed, but you know, I'm not going to go out and do that, so I had to find a way to mimic that. So from doing a bit of research with that book and then just on the internet, a really good source I kind of came across was how they did a lot of the sound effects for Mortal Kombat, and like a lot of the gruesome like bone breaking things, and to mimic a bone being broken, you just snap a piece of celery, and as long as it syncs up, and that's all you need. For the head being smashed, you wanted something like kind of organic sounding, a bit mushy, so I was basically in my kitchen in an apron just punching the inside of a watermelon. And it's one of the things that I do love about like post-production and just like film audio in general, because you can be totally creative with it and like unconventional and still get like amazing results with it, whereas like like things like camera and visual is all like you can see what's happening. With audio, it's very kind of like behind the scenes. There's a bit of like movie magic to it, and unless I told you the thing about like the dog walking, or about like the celery thing, you'd think it would be the real thing. So I'm just going to show you how I did the Foley for this scene in particular. So this I basically recorded myself doing like multiple takes and then kind of laid it all on top. So I got different head smashes, which are basically the bangs, me banging like my palm on a wall. Then you got the celery snapping to mimic like bone breaking, and that implemented another free plugin called Bark of Dog, which is used as like a bit of like a bass boost. So if you want that as a like I like that quite a lot, and it's really good for music as well. And then also the watermelon smashing, like once the smash happens, then you know it's very gruesome indeed. So I'm just going to play the audio example. I'm not going to actually play the video in question, just because the footage is quite graphic, and I don't want it to get flagged down or censored. So I'm just going to show you the audio example that I've got for it. So the final example I want to show you for today is a interior scene that is shot on a bus. The bus that we filmed on was a static bus. It was no longer, you know, it was out of commission. So I wasn't able to actually film the engine or like, you know, or traveling or commuting. So in order to get around that, I had to implement, I had to use some sources and some from royalty-free websites and stuff. And as long as you're able to, as long as you know, read the terms and conditions and make sure that you are safe to use it and for your purposes, then you know, then that's all good. So for this as well, I had to do the door opening and closing, and also the phone vibrations. So I'm going to be able to show the footage for this. So this is the example for that. And on that note, I think I'm going to conclude the masterclass. I hope you've all had a wonderful time, and hope everyone's at least learned something new or enjoyed themselves. And I would just personally say that the world of post-production is very vast, and just any roles on the roles are just a wide spectrum of opportunity. If you've got the passion and drive, then you can really go a long way. You could really go a long way. For lower budget things, of course, you might have to be like a one-man band kind of thing, doing a little bit of, you know, bit of everything. But that's good though, because then you get an appreciation for each of the aspects and fundamentals of post-production sound. And then if you so wanted to, you can then pursue or specialize in certain things like ADR, Foley, sound design. Then you can really get into your niche, even composition and composing as well. So you can really get into your niche and, like, you know, establish yourself or brand yourself as that, but also with the skill set that you can also do other things as well. I also just want to stress the importance of networking. I feel like it's the number one thing that will get you opportunities and jobs out there. I know because of COVID and the pandemic and everything, you know, getting in touch with people or speaking face to face is near impossible at the moment, but just getting in contact with production companies, directors, production managers, post-production teams or coordinators, then, you know, you can get your name out there, tell them what your interests are, what your passion is, what you can do, what services you can provide, and a little goes a long way. Someone will always need work in post, and so there'll always be someone looking for your services, and I think, you know, Just got to be right place at the right time, and hopefully all the opportunities and are fruitful, and you have a bright future ahead of you. I just want to also note that if any of you, I'll be present for the next hour on Twitter. If anyone wants to get in contact or get in touch with, just get in touch with me about any general questions or advice. If you want to ask me or anything or discuss about anything, then use the hashtag INDIs2021. INDIs2021. And if you tweet that at the official Indies Leeds Festival, then and ask your question, or like put in brackets for post-production sound, or my name, then I'll know you're addressing it to me and I can respond accordingly. So yeah, hope you all have a wonderful time.